Welcome back to the channel, everyone. This is Aircon Australia, and today I'm translating another awesome video from one and only Ilya from Klubniy Servis, Moscow, where he will teach us a few basic things to look out for when we are buying used cars. And I'm talking really used cars, the ones that you don't want to get a rust bucket, basically, but you know that you can't afford anything, well, reasonably new-ish kind of thing. So we're talking about 10-year-old cars. We're talking about, by Australian price standards, something that if you want to fit into 10,000 Australian dollars, for example. But you, wherever you are, please apply your own logic and knowledge of the local automotive market to basically create that ballpark of, that's the kind of price range that they're talking about. We're talking old cars, but not all of us can afford something brand new or even near new. Some people are students. All day they need a car in the urban environment, but they cannot afford anything new. Some people are simply struggling. Some people need a second vehicle and don't have the budget. You know, basically the scenarios when we would look to buy a really old car kind of thing. They are endless, really, in Australia and anywhere else. So Ilya will not try to turn us into auto mechanics, but not all of us, let's face it, have a brother mechanic or someone else friendly mechanic that you can just drive any car that you're looking at for inspection, you know, and for them to take a look at. So you need to have those basic skills and basic things to look out for. I think, yeah, I hope I sold it to you. If if you think that this is a helpful video for you, as always, your like goes a long way. If that's all you can give me and you don't have anything to say, well, fair enough. Thanks very much for watching, but do give me a like so that I know that this video landed well with you. And let's hear what Ilya has to say about the things to look out for when buying a used vehicle anywhere in the world. This video is sponsored by the old friends of this channel, Ottocast. Ottocast are very well established on the market manufacturers of wireless Android Auto and wireless Apple Carplay AI boxes, which is basically a wireless adapter for your car. If your car is struggling with wireless connectivity to built-in wired Android Auto, wired Apple CarPlay, then Ottocast is one of the major biggest brands that are offering massive discounts to my community to check out. Check out the links in the description below. They have a lot of units. Lately I've reviewed like a couple of them, and this is also your chance to check the Auto Gear Reviews sister channel of mine, of Aircon Australia, where I go in depth into unboxing, installation and other things about these units. Check them out. The very first thing that Ilya suggests is that wherever you are, if you're considering a really used car, old car, basically, always go for Japanese inexpensive one. A good example is this used Suzuki Grand Vitara. First things first, you will look for the most obvious missing parts. Yes, it happens. It can happen to you, in case you thought that it might not. In this example, the car radiator is entirely missing, believe it or not. Why? Well, how can this happen? Very easily, apparently. Radiator needs to be cleaning and washing properly after many thousands, if not 100,000 kilometers, which leads to it failing if not done properly, if not washed. And clearly here the previous owner could not be bothered doing it, so they instead have just removed it for a quick sale, connecting the pipes directly to the engine, and you can imagine that there would not be any kind of cooling happening. So if you did not open the bonnet or pay attention, the car will not die immediately. It may seem fine to you, but it will die a little later due to the engine overheating. Second weak point to look out for is the Aircon compressor, and generally how well does the aircon work in this old car you're looking at. If compressor is old, it starts kind of spewing out metal particles, debris for the lack of a better term, into the bowels of the engine, connector pipes and the whole shebang. Cleaning out of this debris is a very particular process, and it's an expensive process, it's an involved process. Not many ex-owners of the old vehicles bother with it, and chances are that if compressor has not been changed relatively recently, if you don't have records of it, the problem with it will come soon and they will be all yours. Next, we inevitably go to take a look at the brakes, and preferably not just the disc brakes and pads, but the whole braking system. People don't really bother servicing the supporting systems. They only change the pads typically, but the supporting systems such as the bolts, beams, arms, pistons, especially in those really old used cars, yeah, that you will get cheaply, relatively cheaply, And this is yet another basically disaster waiting to happen to you if that's unfortunately the car that has been neglected that way. If you don't see any servicing records of those elements on a really old car, it means that the disc brakes might be in a semi-clutched mode. So they're kind of, they're gripping basically to the central part of the wheel all the time, overheating the system, essentially pushing the brake pads closer to the central disc, wearing out those pads, and certainly not helping with the braking performance. Next, suspension, starting with the frontal struts and spring coils. Is there any obvious observable damage that you can see, or maybe excessive rust, even to your non-specialist eye? Japanese suspension, Ilya says, is generally very, very good, but it is not immortal. He describes here a very clever way, in my opinion, to check if your frontal suspension is still okay in that old car and doing its job, basically. But how to test for it? You test drive the car at a slow speed of about 25 maybe kilometers an hour. Then you press suddenly the brake pedal, I imagine rather firmly, but he doesn't elaborate on it. And if the nose of the car dips more than once, it kind of does two nods as opposed to dips only once, it is likely that the frontal suspension strut needs to be replaced, which will be expensive. When you're buying a used four-wheel drive or an all-wheel drive vehicle, you are obviously inheriting more complex transmission, suspension modules like this frontal kind of axle area, if you like, where you can see that there are multiple transfer cases and they all started leaking oil, quite evidently in this case, and who knows how long this has been ignored. Ilya says that there is about 1 liter of oil in those systems, at least in Suzuki Grand Vitara. So if that liter has leaked out, has not been properly replaced, it is a disaster waiting to happen, really. It might break one sunny day and you will have no other option but to replace the whole frontal, let's call it a knot of mechanical wonders, and it will cost you literal arm and a leg. Put simply, all of this requires rather thorough and serious inspection. Slightly less stressful if it is just a two-wheel drive and not such an involved kind of combination of those little levers and arms as you would see in an all-wheel drive. But even with the front-wheel driving cars, you can't simply forget about it and just ignore it. Here Ilya is pointing yet again a central transfer case that shows shafts connected to it, and at those connection points where the shafts are joining the transfer case, you can see the leaking oil to varied degrees. What this means, we've just discussed. And he points out as well, Ilya, that it's not just Suzuki. He says all the Toyotas suffer from exact same problems. They are not immune to them. The main driving shaft, the big one, should be inspected obviously too, for any primarily wobbling and any loose connections. Primarily, of course, if you cannot lift the car like this and take a look underneath, you obviously cannot diagnose this, and in all honesty, you probably shouldn't be diagnosing it yourself. Just as a private kind of owner watching this video, you should ask a mechanic. But why this video hopefully is still useful is because not many of us, quite honestly, go and see mechanics when we buy used cars. I bought cars just by having a look at them, and I wish I knew these things. Yep. Okay. So Ilya says that Japanese cars, again, like Suzuki's, Toyotas, they're traditionally equipped with rather solid, long-lasting and reliable rear axles and suspensions. But anything, once again, has its limits and nothing lasts forever. So at some point, someone would need to have a look also at these rear big bolts that are connecting the rear suspension modules to the body of the vehicle or to the frame, if there is one. So this is where the balancing happens for the rear axle. And if balancing is off, you will be wearing off the tires very, very quickly. Yeah. And this is something that would very much hit your pocket as a private buyer. Take a look at the condition of the tires, first of all, especially the rear ones. If there is any unevenness or unreasonable wear and tear or uneven wear and tear on one of them, it's better, on another one, it's not. That straight away tells you that balancing is required and it will cost you. Now, condition of the body of the used car you're buying. Main thing one would argue, other than the engine, I suppose, and corrosion, or simply put, rust, is the most obvious problem to look out for. Closely look at the thresholds. Wheel arches, yes, from the inside, not just from the outside. And in Suzuki's, he's also pointing out, Ilya, that apparently the supporting, I don't know how to translate it, beams of the door arches, these central beams that
hold the door in place are also susceptible to rusting quite badly. And yes, as opposed to the popular belief, not only China-made cars rust. It's an urban myth invented to please Aussie bogans, spending their whole credit rating on financing a brand new Toyota Hilux. But that's a story for another time. Take a look at this. Correct cover of a spare tire here on this Suzuki Grand Vitara. Seems like a very small thing, who cares, right? But it might not be, and you should pay attention, and here's why. This tells us that the previous owner was either hit from the back, that's where the crack happened, or he reversed into something, most likely, as otherwise they would have just submitted an insurance claim, wouldn't they? And it would have been replaced, but they didn't. So Ilya says that when you see something like this, it raises more questions, such as, was the tailgate or the rear door basically damaged with that concealed hit or not? Hinges, door arch, and so on. Is there anything else? Any of the pillars supporting that whole rear thing? You need to take a look at those things really, really closely if you see small signs of that kind of damage. And it's not just about the back of the vehicle. You should look at it all around. And here are some more plentiful examples of rather disgusting looking wheel arch rust. From the distance, it might look like dirt, but it's not. It is actually pretty full-on rust, and there is a lot of it. Ilya says that it's the first symptom to spot for you and for me as private owners rather easily. And if it's there, if we see it there, then we know that it absolutely, we either should ditch this as an option and not buy the vehicle at all, or if you particularly love it, price is right, everything else looks fine, arrange for it to absolutely be lifted and taken a look at thoroughly from underneath. And once again, this happens, according to Ilya, to Toyotas, specifically everyone's beloved Prado, Land Cruiser 200s that could look mint from the outside because obviously they polished it for a sale, but from underneath they could be absolute rust buckets. Some of this video reel also, funnily enough, shows kind of switches to them showing how they're also restoring a Russian Jeep. It's a Jeep-like vehicle, name of which will not tell you anything, but for my Russian crowd, I'm going to say that's an Uazik, because it's also rather old and rusty, but obviously has little to do with the Japanese cars, such as Suzuki over here. But it was interesting for me to see. Ilya summarizes all of this for us by saying that it is always cheaper to buy the right vehicle, not buying the first one perhaps that you might have liked or that came up in a search for you, but properly inspecting it, paying attention to details, spotting small sign of trouble and then inspecting it further, investigating it further. That's all he's trying to teach us to do here, right? Rather than buying something that you've liked straight away, oh, the price is right, let me get it, paying for it later with repairs, replacement of key modules, and discovering other upsetting stuff. You don't need to spend even more money. It's not about, oh, don't buy a $15,000 car, buy a $20,000 car. You can stick to your guns. You can look for the right car within your price category. Don't stretch too far, but don't buy a rust bucket either.
And this is it, my friends. I hope you've learned something new. I certainly did when I watched this for the first time, and that's why I thought I'm going to translate this, because this is kind of practical and this is rather awesome. If you did enjoy it, as always, you know what I'm going to say. Don't leave without leaving me a quick like before you go, and subscribe for more videos from me. I translate videos, I talk about my own experience with the cars, I talk about automotive car electronics and essential things for you. So if any of this resonates with you, you're most welcome in our little growing club. And goodbye for now. I'll talk to you next week.